Is going to be how to do your car basically the cheapest way on a major budget. Some of you guys, I noticed, that $100 might be a huge amount of money to you, and maybe you're just trying to do your bug really, really on the cheap. And here's a way to do it. I talked to a couple guys, and some guys were trying to use Rust-Oleum to paint their car just because they didn't want it to rust anymore. And I'd really kind of want to steer you away from doing that. It's not, a Rust-Oleum isn't going to last. It turns chalky and fades out in a year or less. And I'm going to show you how you can get it done. Not to get the same results as possibly the blue bug, but get it to be something that looks like a paint job, doesn't look like junk. I mean, this material here is what they use at Mako for some of their jobs, because in the brighter colors like reds and blues, this one is a green. It's a lot cheaper product. This is about $120 for paint versus 120 to 150 for paint versus typically $300 to $500. It also meets VOC requirements for California, 2.8 VOC, and it's actually pretty good stuff. Not bad. It doesn't polish quite as nice as this is industrial finish. The regular Valspar car paint is busts a little bit nicer than this stuff does, and dries a little bit harder. You gotta wait a little bit longer to buff it, but you can get it to polish out and look just the same as automotive paint, and it won't fade out. Here's the primer you can use. This is a gray acrylic primer, lacquer primer. Back in the old days, we used to use this stuff as the way that we did everything, and then they came up with polyester primer, and we switched to using that. A lot of shops, and we were doing BMWs and Mercedes with the polyester primer because it came out a little bit nicer, sanded a little bit heavy. This would leave a little bit of a mapping around your bodywork and stuff like that. There's a way to fix that too, by just painting and doing it twice. Painting it one time, letting it dry a couple hours, and then repainting again, or letting it dry overnight and then color sanding it and then painting it one more time. So you can do that with this material too, because it does have it's a catalyzed urethane single stage paint. So it's actually a good paint. It goes on pretty shiny. But let me show you some of the other products that you can do to do your bodywork and your paint on the absolute cheapest, lowest budget possible. They have this plastic filler that's about $13 a gallon. Evercoat also makes a production grade one. They don't have any of those around right now. And every once in a while you'll see it for $10, and it works about the same as the other stuff. It's a little bit harder to spread possibly than some of the better ones. You can always add honey and make it the same. To do your body work and stuff, you can actually do your hammer work with a cheap, $3 hammer. I've even been known to, back in the old days, to use a rock as a dolly. So I mean, there's a way to do it. You can pound it out with about anything you can. Another cool tool is one of these crowbars. A cheap crowbar like this is like $3 or $2 at Harbor Tools. To get behind everything and use this as a dolly, you can actually hold this up against your low spot on the inside of the dent and pound it with the other to do the same thing as a dolly does, or also a block of wood. You can use a 2x4 and get yourself some longboard paper and take a piece of 2x4 like this, cut it, and then rip it so that it's the same width as the longboard paper. Make sure it's a nice straight 2x4. Make sure it's nice and straight. Maybe even sand both sides of it, and sand it so you don't get splinters on it. And not this one. This one's got a lot of concrete junk on it, but a nice clean piece of 2x4. You can go to a construction site, pick one up for free usually, like a piece of block. And then what you'll use is you put the longboard paper on it, and you can actually use thumbtacks on both sides. Years ago, back in high school, there was a guy named Ken who used to look through the fence when I was doing my body work on my car, and he wanted to buy he told me, I'm going to buy me a bug, you know. I go, yeah, really? He goes, yeah, I'm going to fix it up and everything else. Well, a couple of years he became friends, and I was a senior and he was a freshman, and so a couple of years went by and he bought himself a bug, and I went over and looked at it, and I showed him what I'm showing you right now, how to use a 2x4 to do the body work and how to do plastic filler. He used a drill and a grinding wheel to grind down the stuff to bare metal. That's another thing you can do that I didn't put in the first video that came out like crap, so I'm making a new one. But anyway, he actually used that drill and got everything to bare metal, did all of his body work with a 2x4 and longboard paper, and over a 5-year period he finally finished the car. And I hadn't seen him in a long time, and I saw him and I said, well, what happened to your bug? You finish it? He goes, yeah. You know, his cousin took it over or whatever because he didn't ran out of money, and that car ended up on the cover of VW Trends. So that was a premium show car, award-winning car that he built with a 2x4 and a longboard. So, and he was the first black guy, African American, to have a car on the cover of VW Trends. So it was a really awesome moment in time for me. I thought it was great, and I think VWs are for everybody, not just back then. It was only white guys that did VWs, so I thought that was kind of weird, and we changed that up. So that was pretty cool. I'll show you some more stuff here. To do your block sanding, you can get one of these at O'Reilly Auto Parts. They're like $3, and it's a soft but kind of stiff foam. And on a Volkswagen, it works great because everything's round. And you can just use regular sandpaper and wrap it around this to do all your blocking with, say, you can even use 180 if you're really trying to stretch it, because that 180 won't wear out quite as fast as the 220 will. And you might get a little bit of sanding scratches, but it'll still look a whole lot better than if you use Rust-Oleum. In fact, you probably won't get anything if you put it on heavy enough. You put enough material on, about a gallon of that paint on a Volkswagen, you should be fine. Anyway, so basically that's how you can do your bug with basically a very, very cheap budget, say $250 in material, somewhere in there, maybe less than $300 with sandpaper, and basically with almost no tools. Oh, one more thing. To sand down and strip your car, you can use one of these sanders here, but I really wouldn't recommend sanding primer with it. And when you start it up, you're going to want to put it on the surface and then start it. Otherwise, if you turn it on first, and they have these at Harbor Freight for like 10 or 15 bucks. These cheap, and the sandpaper, you know, is a hook loop system. You don't want to turn it on first and then put it on the sandpaper, because you'll end up with a bunch of half-round moon-looking things in your paint job, because as soon as you touch that sander onto the surface while it's spinning, it just etches a quick moon into your surface. So you want it on the surface first, and then turn it on, turn it off. Oh, and then to paint your project and to spray it with primer, you can get one of these Harbor Freight tools, spray guns. You can use a really small compressor, but it will start to run out as you go. So you can maybe do your car in sections, and you can actually use this and with a pretty small compressor. And you won't get a full. It'll start to lose atomization partway through, but you still will get it painted, and it will look okay. I mean, I've done them with a 2 horsepower, 4-gallon compressor with this spray gun, and it doesn't keep up totally, but it will be enough to atomize the paint enough to make it look okay. So that's all the ways you can do it with basically hardly any money out of your pocket and hardly any tools, and still paint your car. So there's no excuses now. get on it and start getting it done. Let's see you at the next show.